guys, welcome to Hey Lamb, a Mariah dedicated podcast. This is my personal little playground where I get to chat to other huge Mariah fans. I am your host, Matt, aka Treacle. Perhaps you are watching over on True Treacle, my YouTube channel, because this is a video podcast. So you can listen where all good podcasts are available, but also you can watch on YouTube as well. And today I'm very excited because I'm chatting to someone who is completely new to all of you, completely new to my audience, whether you've been listening to the podcast or watching my YouTube channel. Today we are saying hey to Josh Tonks. Hey Josh.
Hi Matt.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
It is a pleasure to have you here. So we met through the YouTube channel. You were someone that's popping up in comments, a regular commenter, and then we connected on social media. And this is exactly what I have loved about the YouTube channel and the podcast, because I get to connect with other people. So you are completely new to my audience. So please tell everyone a little bit about yourself. Are you in London, around London? I'm not even sure where you live.
Yeah, so so my name's Josh. I am mostly in London. But because of the pandemic, I've been back in Birmingham.
Okay.
Yeah. So I've lived in London for like 10 years. I'm an actor, so I trained in musical theatre there, and I just stayed and carried on with all of that. But yeah, it is what it is, Anna. It is what it is.
Because I got the impression through some of your social media, and it's when I sat down to kind of get ready for this podcast, I said, I don't actually know 100% if Josh is from London. I feel like he is in London. So that makes sense. I think that's happened to a lot of people with the past year. It's been going back to parents or going to friends or just
For sure.
moving around. Yeah. But at the past year, how's it been treating you? Okay?
Yeah, it's been challenging, but I think, like, big picture, I can't really complain. My parents have a lovely house. They've been very generous taking me back in. It's the first time I've lived with them for 12 years, so it's actually been a nice opportunity to sort of reconnect.
Yeah.
And last year as well, the weather was really good for like a good period of it. Like, we sort of had an extended summer. So I got to spend a lot of time in the garden. So yeah, it's been great. And then of course, YouTube, watching your channel, it's nice to still be able to feel connected to the things that you love, even if you're not around or, those people all the time on the day to day. So it's kind of been a godsend. So thank you so much for having me on and doing it, like creating this content that we can sort of, consume. It's great.
Of course, thank you. It's my pleasure to have you on. The channel just came out of, I don't want to say boredom, having the extra time, because I live by myself. I live in a beautiful spot on the coast, and I have no grumbles over the past year because I've had all this time, and I think it was like 2 weeks into the first lockdown here in England, and the sunshine came out to play. So it was around this time last year. I was on my balcony, and I've got mostly Mariah, leaking out from the living room into the, out onto the balcony, and I had a good few months of that, and it got to summer, and I'm like, okay, this situation is not changing. We are continuing with lockdown, and I wanted something to kind of fill my time. So I thought I'll just go on YouTube and play, and I'll start with Mariah content, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. And like, 9 months later, here we are. You and I have got a few shared interests because Josh, everyone loves, same as me, loves Trixie Mattel.
Yeah.
My favorite drag queen. Absolutely love Trixie Mattel. And you're a massive, massive horror fan, right?
Yeah, I am. You can't see it, but on my little shelf, there is a little ghost face as well, but he's just out of shot. So yeah, from Scream.
I must say I am a horror fan, but you're like a horror buff. Like you're watching things and tweeting about movies I haven't heard of. Like, you seem to be really knowledgeable with like the history of the genre, whereas I just have like a few favorite films and things. But it's interesting to see someone who has that interest but has even more knowledge, if that makes sense. So I enjoy all of your content on social media, whether it's Trixie Mattel or other drag queens, but horror. I love all of it. You're quite active on social media, actually.
I am, yeah. I think, again, like you said about boredom, there's not been a lot to do. Even when I moved to another city, had to get another job, but was almost immediately furloughed, and so it's like, what else can I do? And I do think the beauty of social media and YouTube and things like that is that my best friends, my closest friends, they're not Mariah fans, really. They like her, but they don't love her. They'll watch a horror movie with me, but they're not going to be obsessive in the way that I am. And to sort of like stop myself from boring them, there's this whole world where you find a group of people that actually will sit and allow you to like list your top 10 favorite horror movies, and there are a group of people that will listen and talk about your favorite Mariah remixes or whatever, and won't be bored and can talk endlessly about it. I love that, and it saves my friends being like, Josh, just shut up.
That's exactly it. We all need that space. And hello, MC30. There's been so much going on. You can't just sit in your corner of the land and just consume it and enjoy it. You need to be online and chatting with everyone. What have some of your favourite moments been with MC30? Because there's been a lot.
It's been, I think, for just to start off, it's been incredible. I kind of think from 2018 till now, we've been spoiled. We've been spoiled with so much content. And I love the fact that she's just letting the music speak for itself. She's just letting the like flawless catalog speak for itself. I think my favorite moments of it has just been the Friday EP drops. I think that weekly little sort of instant grab, and like, even though we've probably heard them all before, or most of these remixes before, to have them all in one place. Like, I'm much of a completionist. And I think Mariah Carey is too. You can sort of see the way that, like, you look at her number ones albums and things like that, the way she structures things is very from beginning to end. She gives you all the content in one place. And to do that with the EPs, my like organizational brain absolutely loves that.
For those of you that would like to connect with Josh on social media, you are on Instagram and Twitter, both Joshua Tonks. Fantastic. Let's get that formality out there. Joshua Tonks on Instagram and on Twitter. So, Josh, I want to know, how did you find Mariah's music? Where did it all begin? What was that initial exposure? And when did you find your way to the Lamely?
So, it kind of started indirectly through my dad. He is a huge music fan, a music lover, and he just had just a whole heap of cassette tapes. Remember those?
We do on this podcast. We sure do.
We definitely do. So he had loads and loads and loads and loads. Obviously, his tastes are very different to mine. He's listening to a lot of kind of, rock music, 70s, 80s, all of that, which I love. But, my little gay brain goes straight to the Bodyguard soundtrack, Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation, and then he had 4 Mariah Carey cassettes. He had the debut, he had Emotions, Merry Christmas, and Daydream.
Go
so
Dad.
They were the forced right? They were the first albums that I listened to, and I just used to consume the vocals. Like, I just thought were amazing, and I'd like try and sing along all the time. So I'd always known of her and I'd always loved her, but I almost didn't put 2 and 2 together until the emancipation of Mimi. And I think I was trying to, I knew you were going to ask this question. I was trying to like pinpoint exactly when I became a lamb, and I think that was kind of the moment. And I think it was around the same time that YouTube became an actual thing. And I remember just finding this website that had all these videos of this artist, and I would just watch all of her live performances and like analyze, like, oh, that vocal change there, or oh, that remix, or what's this? Oh, she did Vision of Love on The View in 1998, and I'd obsess over all of that. So it was around that time, and from then on, it's just been, game on.
No looking back. I find it really interesting that you've credited your dad. You're the first person that I've spoken to that I can think of that credits their father. It's always the mother. It's always my mother had a cassette. I've heard that a lot. Or my friend had a cassette or something. You're the first person. Yeah, I think you're the first person I can think of that can credit their dad. So props to Dad. Full points to him.
Yeah. I always wind him up about it as well. Like, it's your fault.
Well, I say that to my mother. It was the Daydream cassette for me because I was obsessed with All I Want the year before. So she got me the Daydream cassette, and it was no looking back. So there's so many of us. I think those of us that are in I'm gonna say like a certain age bracket. I don't want to put you in my bracket. I feel like you're a little bit younger than me. I don't need numbers. It's fine. But
We don't acknowledge time.
exactly. We've got our parents to credit, and in a future episode what I'd love to do is to sit with some like really really like young baby lambs that have come in like after emancipation, after E equals MC squared, just to kind of hear about their journey, because I don't think it wasn't it wasn't cassettes for them, it probably wasn't CDs for them, it's probably going to be like through, you know, someone shares a link, or it's, you know, discovering Mariah for the first time on YouTube. That to me it's a completely foreign idea. I can't imagine just, you know, discovering someone like Mariah on YouTube, and like then where do you go?
Yeah. and also like the newer artists that have come out who are very influenced by her, you know, the Arianas and the Tori Kellys, and like becoming fans of those artists and then sort of circling back, because I know, and we're going to get onto this later, but I'm a huge Britney Spears fan as well.
Yes, we're going to talk about that for sure.
I found Britney obviously because I was of the perfect age for her to sort of be my icon, but then I found Madonna, you know what I mean? So you kind of you retroactively go back and you see, and Janet Jackson as well, and you go back and you see sort of who these artists were influenced by. So it would be so interesting for you to do that and sort of see.
Yeah. Do you remember like when you became like a full-on fan, like then jumping on, was it like, you know, YouTube moments and you go down that kind of rabbit hole, and it's performance?
It was probably around the time I was like 15 and 16, and I used to buy all my CDs from a website called play.com. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh my gosh, you're taking me back. I remember play.com. I used to get my DVD. Yeah, they were really competitive prices, weren't they? I'd get my DVDs from play.com. Wow.
Yeah. So I'd do that, and I would, you know, I'd be going back through all these big artists' catalogs. So I'd get all the Michael Jackson, I'd get all the Janet, and I did it with Mariah as well. And I remember, like, certain times, like when I got the Butterfly album, when that delivered, and it was like a November night and it was rainy and I was coming home from school and that CD had arrived, I was like, oh yeah, this is the one. And like listening to The Roof and listening to Breakdown in that sort of like autumnal vibe. So that's a huge moment. And then Glitter, I remember when I bought that along with the it was the Queer as Folk TV series DVDs. I don't know if you remember that show.
Yeah, of course.
I bought that, and I remember looking at them both and being like, it's time. And that was when I came out to my family. I was like, it's time. You know what I mean? Like, these are too gay.
Start looking at the bedroom shelf and, you know, how it's
just clocking it and being like, yeah, okay.
Let's touch on Glitter briefly, because it's very relevant this year, the 20th anniversary, and it, you know, it hasn't been addressed as part of MC30. Some lambs were freaking out. I'm like, just wait. I know nothing, but I'm hoping for everything. I just feel like I feel it in the stars. I feel it in my bones. We're going to have a 20th anniversary moment. I'm really looking forward to it, because although it's not my favorite album, I love what it stands for. I love the fact that she's had this justice, retribution over the past few years, and it was my era when I came into the Lamley. I'm always saying it had a rough initiation because it was like a really rough time to come in and start standing. So yeah, I'm not like it's not my number one album, but I love the era and I'm so excited for a potential 20th anniversary moment. What are your thoughts, feelings, and memories with the Glitter era?
Oh, can't wait. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's not my favorite film.
That's fair.
You know, I think, you know, some people love a sort of campy cult classic. You know, it's not my fave, but the soundtrack's a banger. Like it's awesome.
She did her thing on that.
Oh, she did, yeah. And I love it because right sort of up to that point, you'd kind of get maybe one or two up tempos on an album, and then the rest would be, you know, a mid-tempo R&B or lots of ballads, which obviously we love. But to get an album that feels kind of like wall-to-wall sort of disco was unprecedented and very ahead of its time, because that sort of sound has become, I mean, look at Dua Lipa, like it's become such a huge sound, and it's like, hello, she was doing that like turn of the millenniums.
She was just a little bit early, perhaps, to her own detriment. That's a really interesting point about the number of up tempos, because I don't often think of it that way, but that's a very fair point. And there is that debate of, well, it's not really an album, it's a soundtrack. And I'm like, it's 10, 11 Mariah Carey recordings. It's a Mariah Carey album.
Yeah.
But it's like a concept album. And this is the sort of thing I want Mariah to move into in the future. We get like that jazz album, or we get a gospel album. I look at that, I'm like, well, she gave us an 80s album. She could further down the line give us a 90s throwback album, and give us Fantasy Part 2 or Heartbreaker, like the remix of the remix, or she can do whatever she wants. But have you been much of a physical collector in the past? You mentioned a few of the other artists that you've been into. Like, do you still have CDs? I mean, the only CDs I've got signed ones by Mariah, but do you still have like physical music?
I haven't bought anything physical probably in the last few years because I've been around and about. I lived in Canada for a bit, came back to London.
Me too.
Yeah. Where did you live in Canada?
Did we talk about this? Quick sidebar, sorry kids, bear with us. I was in Montreal for 5 weeks at the end of 2016, and then I left there with a full-time job offer. There was like a 5-week audition / job interview for 5 weeks. And then I took that full-time job offer, and I moved to Montreal in May 2017. And then I spent a month in January 2018 in Quebec City. And then for 6 months, I was on tour across Canada and just all across North America. So I spent most of my time in Montreal. Where were you in Canada?
I got a 2-year visa to live there because I was in London. I just changed agents. I was sort of at a place where I was kind of wanting to navigate a shift within my career and sort of start to do a little less theatre and a little bit more film and TV. And so my friend who had been working at a summer camp out there was like, Josh, you should come, like, while you're, thinking about like changing things up a bit, like come out and work. So I worked at the summer camp and I directed their shows, and that was in a little town that's like sort of 2-3 hours outside of Toronto.
Okay.
But because I had the visa the next year, so 2018, I moved to Vancouver because it's West Coast, it's above LA, it's the Hollywood of the North, quote unquote. And so while I was out there, I was able to make a short film, which came out in 2019. And then this year it was supposed to be doing the feature version of it, but it's got pushed back. So it's going to be the top of 2022. But it was this incredible experience. And I got to visit Los Angeles a lot as well, which I'm now obsessed with and love. I loved it while I was out there.
See, this is why this is so much fun, because actually we said before we started recording, you and I have never actually spoken on camera face to face at all. It's all been through social media, and we swapped a few voice notes. But that's why I was looking forward to this, so we could actually have a proper conversation. So there you go. We never actually had that whole I was in Canada for a while. That's a small world. We're going to take a very quick break, and then when we come back, I want to get onto the Mariah Britney discussion, because I think there's a few things to say. So we'll be right back after a very quick break. Thanks for listening to Hey Lamb, guys. I hope you are enjoying it. If you are, you can leave me a little tip. You can buy me a drink over on buymeacoffee.com. It is a great way to show your support to your favorite creators by buying them a drink. Simply head over to buymeacoffee.com/heylamb and you can tip me with a little drink. Cheers. So, Josh, you mentioned briefly earlier that you are a Britney fan. As I understand it, you are quite a big Britney fan. So tell us a little bit about that, because then I want to talk about the whole Britney-Mariah, similarities, relationship, etc. But first of all, set us up. What's the whole, Britney history for you?
Yeah, I think before Mariah, it was Britney, and I've always said that Britney and Mariah are they're my two top artists of all time. And sort of like, regardless of where they are in their careers, the highs and the lows, peaks and the valleys, I always support them sort of regardless. So with Britney, it was very much just a case of, she came out when I was like 9 or 10. And so I was the perfect age for it. And I was like, who is this like fierce young woman that I'm now obsessed with? Like, I loved her voice, I loved her dancing, I loved her fashion. looking back now, that's hilarious because looking at early 2000s fashion is a bit of a joke. But at the time, it was like, oh my God, you're like the coolest person in the world. And I've been through the entire journey of her career, which I think has been incredibly well publicized and is currently sort of a huge topic within the media. And so I feel like I've been on a huge roller coaster with her. And if anything, if we're talking about Mariah has been somewhat of a comfort because I've seen her sort of trajectory from when I said 2018 really just like skyrocket. And so she's been somewhat of a constant, whereas I've sort of seen, we know what's happening with Britney at the moment and her struggles. To have that sort of constant with Mariah and like her back catalogue coming in and like, MC30, that's been such a huge source of like, great, this is amazing, this is working. So
yeah, I guess like if one's on rest, maybe the other one's putting out an album, or like you say, Britney's got her situation, and Mariah's had this like almost year-long retrospective of her career, so she's been pretty busy and pretty active. What do you make of the whole Britney Mariah relationship? I can think of a couple of times I remember seeing a young Britney. Did she cut like? Is there a video clip of Britney singing Mariah or something in like her early days? Certainly, I can remember her talking about Mariah being an influence when she came out on the scene. But maybe you know a few more clips and things.
Yeah. She's so in her first tour, the Baby One More Time tour, she actually did a cover of Open Arms.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Obviously, it's a Journey song, but you know that Britney was completely doing the Mariah version because once Mariah covers a song, it becomes her own. And she's consistently said, I think, a lot of times that she was influenced by her voice and her singing, like throughout her career. But I think what's interesting is, I think from a surface level, you look at these two artists and they appear completely different. You've got Mariah, who is known for her voice, her songwriting. She's a New York City girl. And then you've got Britney, who's like grew up in the South. She was a Disney kid. She's known for her like spectacle, her dancing. You wouldn't have thought that the two would sort of almost be comparable. They're sort of very different. And their sound as well. Mariah is very R&B, hip hop. Britney, is known for her pop and her sort of dance records. But then obviously I read The Meaning of Mariah Carey, and you get to that glitter section and it talks about,
oh my gosh,
what her brother was sort of implicated in, and the mental health issues that she was dealing with at that time. And then you can completely connect the two together. So when you do get Mariah saying, oh, I love her, I love Britney Spears, you understand why, because I think there is a complete correlation there.
I've got a couple of clips here, and I wonder if you recognise these. It's a good reminder for the listeners. So I believe I have a young Britney, new on the scene, speaking very, very briefly about Mariah.
I've always been really influenced by Mariah Carey. I love her melodies. She's a great songwriter.
I can picture the interview. It's a very, very young Britney, and as what happened, you come out onto the scene and you get asked as a new singer. We all remember it most recently with the past few years, like Ariana. Always talking about Mariah. But back in the day, Britney was asked, Christina was asked. They all get asked, and Britney always spoke positively about Mariah. And I've got a couple here actually of Mariah talking about Britney as well.
We were at the MTV Awards years ago, and we had a whole conversation, and she was just a really nice girl.
So that's on Andy Cohen, and I don't know which year, but it always sounds like it was years ago.
We've been around each other a couple times. From the beginning, when I first met her, she was always a sweetheart.
Yeah.
I would almost love for Mariah to speak more at length, because it just sounds like they do have like a mutual respect, but you never get more than just like a quick little soundbite. If anyone knows of any lengthier clips, then please let us know, because I would love to hear just a little bit more.
The thing that jumps out to me the most there is from day one, you've got Britney Spears, who was seen as this huge sex symbol, probably wasn't taken very seriously. The first thing she says about Mariah Carey is, I like her melodies and she's a great songwriter.
Yes.
Straight away, this is someone that's like completely switched on to the industry and has taste and knows how music works, like an artist straight away.
And we as lambs should know. We should know better, really. If we look back at Mariah's career, like, the public will consume the product as it is presented. And look at Mariah, she says it herself, all buttons up and button down and, you know, whatever, dreaming of this and, you know, everything. And that is, you know, how Mariah was marketed. And then we get to see who Mariah really is when she is flying free and then later on emancipated. But then, well, the same can apply to Britney. She comes out like, I mean, she was what, 17, 18? She was really young.
Yeah, you're probably younger. I think she was
I thought she was
at the
like
end of 16 when she first came out with Baby One More Time.
So she's at the mercy of however they want to present her. I mean, come on, they put her in that schoolgirl's uniform, all, you know, deconstructed and sexed up.
Actually, that was her idea.
Oh, okay.
What they wanted to do, what they wanted to do was do like a kind of robot space animated kind of thing.
I've not heard this. I love it.
No one's going to relate to that. Like, kids aren't going to relate to that. That's not cool. Can we just do something where I'm at school and there's a cute boy and like I'm sitting in class and the bell rings and I'm dancing with my girlfriends, and it becomes like this incredibly iconic moment. Obviously, there is the sort of like the controversial element of it being like a sexy schoolgirl. But honestly, I don't think that would have been in her mind.
No.
Because I doubt many 16-year-olds are thinking, oh, I'm going to be provocative in that way. She's like, I'm just in my school uniform. And to be honest, that school uniform is only a third of the music video, because the rest of it, she's in like her sweatpants, just like dancing in the quad or wherever. Like,
true.
You know, so people remember things differently, I think.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, not the whole video is that look, and it's super interesting to learn that that was her inspiration, her idea. I just always thought that's how they wanted to like launch her and market her. But this is my point. You know, I'm a Britney like fan. I have seen her in Vegas. I couldn't, later on we're going to play Spin, Pin and Bin with Mariah's music. I couldn't play that with Britney because there would be songs that like, I don't know that one, help me out. You know, so I'm not like all the way in with Britney. So I will just subconsciously believe or hold true certain things as they are presented with that, like, you know, like I said, the way she was marketed. I just took that as, well, that was a label decision.
And actually, I just watched I think it's your second episode where you talk about the sort of the misrepresentation of Mariah Carey in the media.
Yeah.
That's a lot of M's to say, but and it's sort of really similar to that. That she, you know, like you said, she was marketed in a certain way, and that's not necessarily true to how she is. And you spoke a lot about the British media, which I found really interesting because it's so true. They're so harsh. And everyone loves to like play the diva card, and I think as a lamb, that's just very like eye roll. When you have like a friend who might be, you know, knows Mariah's, they know All I Want for Christmas Is You and Hero, and they'll be like, oh yeah, but she said this and she did that, and I'm like, where did you hear that from? Like, the Daily Mail? Like, come on, let's be real.
And I hate that, but it really does kind of get through to people, because you challenge a friend. I've had this conversation with a couple of people. They challenge their friends, but why do you think that? Where did you hear that? Oh, I just heard it, or I just know I've heard it enough. And it does kind of subliminally, it does get through gradually. And that's why I've been really fascinated with the recent like press around Britney and everything that's going on. Admittedly, I need to watch the documentary.
The Framing Britney Spears, which was hard work for me, and I'm sure you can relate in regards to Mariah, especially you becoming a fan in the glitter era, because I felt like half my childhood and teenage years was spent justifying this woman's existence and justifying my fandom of her. And when someone, you know, if they slipped up or they did something that was like negative in the media, everyone would look at you and be like, why are you, you know, what do you think about this? And almost like want to tear you down with them. And so to watch that documentary was quite like, it was like watching my entire sort of last, I don't know, like 20 years of a fan get told to me over the course of 90 minutes. It was like quite intense to see.
Wow.
Like, oh, I remember all of that. Like, I remember the head shaving and the umbrella and how that felt when I was, 17, 18 years old, and watching someone who a few years before had been like the princess of pop suddenly take such a drastic decline. And I could imagine that might be similar for you when you were in the glitter era.
Yeah, I can relate. Glitter era for me, I was 17 years young, and I remember it was like a conscious decision. Like, do you tell someone that you're into
Right.
Mariah? But I was kind of torn because it was summer 2001. Mariah was promoting Loverboy in London. It's the first time I saw her in the flesh. It's the first time I met her, got photos of her, autographs, and all the rest of it. I spent a lot of time in London, outside the hotels and doing all of that. So I was so hyped up, and then you come home, and then you can't really share it with people because then they almost like want to put a dampener on it, and you're like, just go away, just go away. And especially then you're going up to London, and then you're online and you are connecting with other people, going back to what you said right at the start of this conversation, then you kind of save all that geek out chat with the people that you know it's a safe space.
You kind of have to. So yeah, it's really tough. It's really tough sort of defending that. But then on the flip side, when they are at their peak, like Mariah literally has all the receipts. She has every single receipt you could think of that you can just go, well, actually, there you go, and actually, there you go, especially now. And that's really nice to be part of a fandom when that is the case. But I think being on the flip side of it and seeing the downsides for both these artists, I mean, Mariah had a dip not that long ago, that was quite challenging to be a fan. And I think, you have to stick with them. But I think it's a lesson to be learned for people that are fans to not knock other fans of other things. Like, just like what you like, unapologetically, enjoy it, and allow other people to do the same. I think that's really, really important, and a lot of people forget that.
That's very good advice, especially to a portion of maybe the Twitter universe.
Oh, 100%.
I don't spend much of my day, any day, on Twitter. I love Twitter, but I'm a bit more selective with how I engage, because you reply to one thing, then you reply to another thing. It always becomes that like YouTube rabbit hole, like the Twitter one. It can be quite consuming.
Yeah, it can. You're very right about that. I'm quite lucky the people that I follow are, for the most part, sort of professionals within sort of, it is, you spoke at the beginning about my sort of love of horror. Most of my engagement on Twitter is with horror fans and film, and the sort of film Twitter. And a lot of them are professionals within the industry. So I think there's an etiquette and a lot of positivity that I see. Some of the negativity obviously creeps in, but it doesn't affect me personally.
You have to, treat it as what it is. At the end of the day, it's not real life. You have to, take that pinch of salt with it all. It's time for another very quick break, and then when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Britney Spears' current situation and the parallels that some of us are drawing with Mariah's situation back in 2001. So we'll be right back after this. Hey guys, I wanted to remind you briefly about my Mariah Carey fan quiz series over on YouTube. Head to my YouTube channel, True Treacle, and check out the playlists. In there, you'll find the Lamb vs. Lamb playlist, and it's got several quiz videos there already. In each episode, I'm playing against my good lamb friend, Nath Moore, and we are guessing the year from rare Mariah photos, naming the song from obscure lyrics, and looking at quotes, working out if Mariah said it, and much, much more. There will be more quizzes coming in the future. If you would like to make one for us to play, then get in touch with me on social media and let's chat. And here's an idea I've had, and I'm putting it out there, so I have to do it now. I'm going to do a live quiz on my YouTube channel one day soon. I'm going to do it soon, I promise. So I'll go on camera with a few lambs, and maybe I'll be the quiz master this time. My guests can play along, and you guys can join in with the live chat too. So look forward to that coming soon to my YouTube channel. In the meantime, please do enjoy the Lamb vs. Lamb quiz series on my YouTube channel, True Treacle. And if you play along, leave me a comment below the video and let me know your score. And we are back. So, Josh, I want to hear a little bit about what you feel about Britney's current situation. I feel like it's an ever changing situation. It's almost coming up, not even, sometimes it's daily. Like if there's a week of like progressions, I'm like, there she is again, there she is again. And there's so much conversation going online. But from your perspective, someone who's been a fan for, you know, a number of years, what's your it's a very broad question, but you know, what's your current, how do you feel about it when you watch it? Do you feel sad? Do you feel mad? Do you feel disappointed? How are you feeling at the minute?
I'm in two minds about it. I think on the one hand, you know, it's none of our business. You know, this is a woman that is quite clearly dealing with mental health issues which have never been disclosed to the public, and quite frankly are none of our business. But at the same time, when someone is a public figure and they are so not vocal, she hasn't said anything about it at all. People's sort of paranoia and sort of a sense of urgency is going to build around it, because you don't know you haven't heard it from her lips, so you don't know what the truth is. The idea of, you know, the notion of her being in the conservatorship isn't new, because she's been in it for 12 years. And so when that happened, I was following it like every day, like, you know, back in like 2008, 2009, when this was all happening. So I think for a lot of people, it's very new news. And I think it's quite salacious news. And I think with the, you know, with TikTok and with Twitter and Instagram and all of this social media that really wasn't around back in 2008, 2009.
That's the difference.
There's a whole new generation of people that can like give their opinion. But I've seen a lot of things where their opinion hasn't been based in any truth. It's been based on like, you know, an Instagram story that someone posted. And there'll be loads of facts in there that aren't true. I think the only fact that we know is, you know, what the court records say, and that's it. We really don't know a lot. That, you know, the makers of the documentary say like, we haven't been able to get in touch with any of the core people who are around her now. So it's really tricky. I know what I would love, but like that's sort of coming from like a selfish fan place. You know, I'd love her to like sit down and do like a tell-all documentary about, or, you know, an interview where she speaks about her situation. But I think that's a bit of a fantasy. Like we don't know what her situation is. I do think what the documentary does really well is address the sort of the catch-22 of a conservatorship, and how it is, there's a lot of people earning a lot of money from her being in that situation, which shouldn't be the case. And I think that's where the majority of my issues come from. It is like, you know, she's paying for lawyers for the opposition. You know, she's not choosing her own. So it's a tricky, complicated situation, and there isn't any hard and fast answers. So I do take a slight issue with the sort of the hashtag Free Britney, because I think it's an oversimplification of something that's very complicated. But I understand that the intent is very positive. But it's really tricky. And bringing it back to Mariah a little bit, I think that when I read the meaning of Mariah Carey, I was almost shocked at how close it came to being something similar.
Yeah, that's,
you know what I mean.
This is where it comes kind of full circle. Those of you that are maybe listening, like, why are we talking about Britney? Because it is interesting, because there are parallels there, and I've always been fascinated, as I said earlier, the relationship between them. And I feel like Mariah's had like an intuitive kind of understanding maybe of Britney's situation. She's just not vocalized it because, like you just said, we haven't got Britney on record. So we don't need other people like commenting on it. I wonder if you, I'm sure you did, but let's remind ourselves of this clip we heard when Mariah was with Andy Cohen again, and he asked her about it.
Reading about all of the control that you faced in both your career and your first marriage, and the issue that you had with your mom around the time of Glitter, I'm curious how you feel about Britney Spears and everything going on with her conservatorship. There are some interesting parallels that I never thought of until I read this question.
You know, I don't feel comfortable commenting on anybody else's personal situation, particularly when it seems so intense. So I would just Send love.
Do you remember seeing that clip recently, Josh?
Yeah, no, I do, and I think she's handled it in classic Mariah fashion, which is she's excellent at avoiding like a response, but she said what she needs to say, which is kind of like she doesn't feel comfortable commenting on something that isn't to do with her, and I think that's sort of maybe advice that more people could take.
Yeah, I'm sure she's reached out privately. I feel like in my head, I hope, I wish, and think that it's more than just, oh yeah, she's sweet, oh yeah, she's like an influence. I kind of in my head think that it's quite likely Mariah has reached out to Britney in some capacity over the past year, especially I think since going through the process of the memoir and Mariah just revisiting everything that went on, because we all know, we all feel like we know Mariah's narrative, we know her story, but the memoir, I mean, Lamb of like however many years, 20 plus years, it was a hot page turner because there was so much there that was news to me. It's like the details and the depth of detail and the whole All That Glitters section and how close, as we said, Mariah came to being in potentially a similar situation. That's how I read it, kind of read, her family are kind of ready to swoop in and get Mariah in a facility where maybe she doesn't have the authority within her own signature to get herself out of it. Someone else is now, harnessing that power. Is that kind of, how you took that section of the book?
Oh, totally. And just the knife edge she was on of like, you signed the wrong thing and then you can't undo it.
Yeah.
You can't undo that. And she was lucky that, sort of she didn't. And the thing that got me was just how many times she said she was tired. She was just, she just needed to sleep. And we all know what we're like when we haven't had enough sleep, or you haven't eaten enough, or you're not hydrated, all these sort of like simple human requirements. And then you put that under the magnifying glass of someone who is being followed and watched constantly, not only by, the general public, the media, but her own team. It felt like she was in her own thriller. It was like ridiculous. Like, you know what I mean? She just like let the woman have a nap, like let her sleep. Yeah. So it was so intense.
And how much, I wonder, was like I think on part of her family, it was like a deliberate ploy, because when you are tired and you are overworked and you're underslept, your defenses are lowered and your ability to make rational decisions is diminished, and you are vulnerable. And as I was reading, I was getting nervous, like, there's the brother at the hotel room door, and and she just, before she even explicitly says, it's a decision I regret, you can hear it already, like, oh my God, she's gonna, for old time's sake, she's gonna trust him. But you're in that vulnerable moment where, like you said, she's overworked and she's just not maybe thinking clearly, and you should be able to rely on family.
She didn't have a safe space. She went from a really troubling home life to a really troubling married life to then being free of that, but then still being tied to the record label, and then just sort of being in a really unstable position with a new management company that didn't know her and hadn't worked with her for the past 10 years. So when she does get to that situation of being so tired, it's like the instinct is to run home to your safe place, but her home was never the safe space. Even after 10 years of her getting the money and buying Patricia the house and all of that stuff, there isn't that stable home life for her to go back to. So when I look at something like the song Side Effects, which is on E=MC², there was a little part of me that was like, oh, this song's a banger, but why is she still singing about this in 2018? And then you read the memoir and you're like, oh, the emancipation of Mimi was literally the first time she was. It's like, that's not bullshit. Like, she was actually emancipated.
Completely
and so for her
free.
to write a song like that it was all still so close. Whereas for us, it's like, girl, it's been 15 years. Why are you still singing about Tommy Mottola from 1994? Like, oh, actually, no, it all continued on because he was still part of her life, so close to that period,
Yeah. I remember having the same kind of sentiment, like, oh, is this when she described the song before we heard it, because she was connected to that song. She spoke about it in a couple of interviews, I remember, and I'm thinking, is this a bit of a stretch? Like, you know, I still, you know, leaning on that, which sounds bad, but like without judgment. But I was like, huh, okay, it surprises me because we're so far past that. But it's when if you don't have like that insider knowledge, and I don't have, a few people have kind of educated me about, well, actually the legalities of this and the contract situation, that's the first time she has been completely free and doesn't owe anyone anything. She's out of all these different, you know, contractual situations. It makes sense. What's your hope for the Britney situation? What's the way forward, do you think?
I don't know the way forward, but I know what I want, and I just very simply want her to be able to live a life that she wants to, that she can. It's really simple, but just to sort of be happy. You know, she doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. Should whatever happen legally happen, you know, if she gets out of the conservatorship, or if things change in regards to, you know, her father's, you know, involvement within it, if that does change in the way that she wants to, I'm not expecting like, bam, a new album. And like, you know, peak Britney, you know, she's just like she was back in blah, 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 blah. Like, I think that's a really unhealthy way of looking at things. And she just let the woman live her life. It's very simple. And I think the real fans of her, that's what they think. I think there's a lot of people that, you know, I don't know if I should say this, but like maybe claim to be fans that sort of actually selfishly just want her to be how she was back in like 2001 to 2004. And it's like, just get over that and like appreciate her for who she is, rather than this sort of like microcosm of time that she was quote unquote at her peak. You know, a lot of us do that with Mariah Carey as well, you know.
Exactly. I was going to say, we often want to have like a parallel era to something that we were really close to or really fond of, and we have to go, that was then, this is now, and now doesn't have to be like the way it was. And I mean, look what happened, you know, for Mariah when she had that complete and total freedom, and it wasn't easy to get to that point, but there's been ups and downs since emancipation, of course, but so much has happened, and it's, you know, almost entirely all positive. And not being a massive, huge Britney fan, just in terms of, I don't mean that negatively, I'm a fan of hers, but I just mean I don't have the full discography knowledge, and although I haven't got around to watching the documentary just yet. But, you know, from my level, you just want any artist that you can tell is just a good person, just to be happy and just to be free enough to do whatever they want to do, because that's all I've ever wished for Mariah. If she wants to do a second Christmas album, that confused me at the time, but it made sense for her, and you go with it, and then you're like, okay, cool, so that's what we're doing this year. Cool, you get on board and you go for it, and then you end up falling in love with whatever they're doing. But would you be down for like a Mariah Britney moment? I mean, I don't know like what that would be or how that would sound. I've got no real like ideas, but this would be like a massive crossover for you. So what do you think?
Love that. I have no idea what it would sound like. I don't even know what strengths they would play to, but I could maybe, I don't know, maybe something fun and cute, like a Touch My Body kind of moment between the two, because obviously Mariah's not going to be giving it hard choreography, and Britney's not going to be giving you all the vocals. So there's going to have to be a meet in the middle moment, and I think something maybe like a Touch My Body, or an R&B pop crossover that's like fun and sunny.
What about if maybe, I mean, Mariah does allow people to cover her songs, but it's usually, you know, All I Want for Christmas, and, you know, that's mostly it.
Yes.
But what about if Britney covered a Mariah song, and then Mariah comes in for like it's not announced, and then it's just like boom, there in the music video, and then she's there for like the bridge or something. So it's like, okay, I'm giving this song to you, I'm allowing you to have your interpretation, but just for the nostalgia, I'll come in and we'll do that one verse together. Like she's there for like one scene of the music video or something.
I could see that happening, and I could kind of see that happening with maybe a Christmas song as well.
Okay.
Because Britney has a song called My Only Wish this year, and it's her only Christmas song. Yeah. And it does have that kind of like poppy, All I Want for Christmas Is You sort of flavor. And I've always wondered what would happen, because I think last year was the 20th anniversary of that song.
Okay.
you know, the dream would be like, oh, Britney sort of re-releases or re-records that, and like Mariah could hop on that actually. I don't know whether Mariah would like want to hop on a Britney Spears song. I think it probably would be the other way around. But that would be really cool.
Who knows? These days, I'm kind of like, I just don't know what. You never know what with Mariah, because she's been putting surprises out. And I feel like she's in a place now and a part of her life and career where she's kind of like, just doesn't give many fucks. Like, she's like, if she wants to do something, she's going to do it. And that excites me, because then I feel like she's not tied to, oh, I have to have an album structured like this and I have to release it like that. I'm like, just do whatever you want to do and throw some new surprises at us. So never say never. Maybe we'll get a Mariah and Britney crossover.
Love that. I mean, did we need a 7-minute version of We Belong Together? No. Was it incredible? Yes, it was. Like, that's what I love about Mariah Carey so much, is that she so obviously loves music. And so she's like 31 years into her career. And she's like, you know what? I'm just going to jam session to like one of my biggest hits that I've sung hundreds of times, don't need to do again, could be sick of, and yet here she is, because she loves it, and reinterpreting the song and the music. Great.
You know, late last year I did have a notion that maybe Mariah would do some like reimaginings and some reworkings of her albums, her songs, and maybe turn some of them into duets. So maybe, you know, go back and revisit something like Heartbreaker, revisit something like Honey. That you don't need to be like commercially released, but bring someone in and make it like a feature or like a back and forth. So it's, you know, just like female empowerment and stuff. So I feel like there are moments that now we kind of explore the idea a little bit together now. I think there are moments, possibilities for Mariah and Britney to come together. And I would love that, because, I mean, she's gone on record and said she would like to do a collaboration with Cardi B. She'd like to do a collaboration with Beyonce. And I'm like, you always had this like affinity with Britney. And although, like you said right at the beginning, they're not two people that you instantly look at and go, oh yeah, there's lots of similarities. But I feel like there are connections with what they've gone through and their stories. And there's obviously love and respect.
People would lose it. Could you imagine, just for like a moment, like, because I think there is a lot of mutual respect between the Britney and Mariah fandoms as well. Could you imagine how insane that would be? Like, for that to actually happen and what that would do? Like, it'd be so unexpected. It would have to be a really good song. But you saying that it being one of hers, I think, is really cool. And I'm now trying to think, like, what would the song be? I'm like, would it be a Dream Lover, or would it be something like a bit later? You know what I mean? Like, what song do you think could work?
Yeah, I think Mariah would probably go forward to someone like Britney, you know, with like a short list, you know, and then, but you know, Mariah, she's going to put some thought behind it. It's not going to be just which song is she happy to kind of crack open and restructure, what is actually going to suit that person. So I am going to like the lead singles from the 90s albums, you know, and, you know, because it's you know, Honey went to number one, Heartbreaker went to, those songs aren't going to go to number one again. It's not about that. It's about having a new take. Like We Belong Together, like you just said, she didn't have to do that. We were not expecting that, but that must have been fun for her and creatively fulfilling. So I think it's more about that side of things and just reworking it. So I'm like, maybe take something that back in the 90s, you're like, oh, Britney's doing these songs, and yeah, Mariah gives us Dream Lover, she gives us Fantasy, Heartbreaker, Honey. Take one of those. Loverboy, I'm just putting it out there. Loverboy, 20th anniversary. That's camp and kitsch, and that, I mean, I can imagine Britney on a Loverboy version. Just saying.
Especially if it did have that little like, if it had that little like hook, you know, from the Firecracker version as well, like, I could see Britney like hopping on that. You know what I mean?
Okay, we put that out into the universe. Anyone listening though, or if you're watching the video podcast, let us know if you've got any ideas. Let us know on the Hey Lamb podcast Instagram account or in the YouTube comments if you are watching on YouTube. Josh, we have got just about enough time to play a quick round of my resident game here on the podcast.
I'm so excited.
It's time for Spin, Pin or Bin. So the rules are very simple. What we do here on the podcast is I have my Random auto generator. I've got all of Mariah's album tracks apart from the Christmas songs plugged into a list, and I'm going to hit select 3 times. It's going to give me 3 Mariah songs, and we have to each choose one to spin, one to pin, one to bin. And all you guys listening, I invite you to play along. So spin is going to be love it, keep it, play it right now. Pin is kind of in the middle. You're not going to play it right this second, put a pin in it for now, keep it for later. And bin is you throw it in the trash and you never get to hear the song again, okay? Those are the rules. 1 song has to be spin, 1 has to be pin, and 1 has to be bin. Josh, are you ready to play?
Yes, I am so excited.
Okay, I'm waiting for like a really hard one to come up because it all depends which songs come up. So, here we go. I'm hitting my generator. The first song is... Oh my God. Loverboy Firecracker version.
Okay.
That we were just talking about. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is When I Saw You from the Daydream album.
Oh, yes.
Going back, I love that album so much. Okay, this might be tough. And the final song is One More Again, Caution.
Ooh.
So, for everyone listening, those 3 songs, we've got Loverboy, the Firecracker version from the Rarities album. We've got When I Saw You from the Daydream album, and One More Again from Caution. You've got to spin 1, pin 1, and bin 1. What are you thinking, Josh?
Well, first of all, we haven't spoken about Caution, and I just have to give that album a shout out because it is one of my favorites. I just think musically, like, I want more of that, to be honest. I loved how concise it was. And I loved that it felt like a sort of full circle moment of her going back to sort of the one title albums with like 10 tracks, but it felt like 2.0, like Caution, it's got edge, the album cover's amazing. So I just have to shout out that.
Love to Caution.
That being said, One More Again is probably my least favorite song on that album. So I think I'm going to spin, obviously, When I Saw You, because it's stunning. I think I'm going to, you know what? I know I'm going back on what I just said. I think I'm going to pin One More Again, and I'm going to bin Loverboy Firecracker.
Really? Not a fan of the Firecracker version?
No, I love it, but it's nuts, isn't it? Like, it's a bonkers song. Because I was watching when you did the reaction video, and you were like, it's still in the intro. It's like 2 minutes, what's going on?
Yeah, there is a lot going on, but the Candy version hit me like that as well back in the day. I think Loverboy's always been very busy, and it hits you quite hard. So just repeat one more time your choices. So
spin When I Saw You,
mm-hmm.
pin One More Again, bin Loverboy Firecracker.
Okay. I'm with you with One More Again because I love Caution, but it quite possibly is my least favorite. I'm going to bin that. And to be honest, I could quite happily pin all 3 of these because I'm kind of like on the fence with all of them, but playing by my own rules, I'm going to bin One More Again. I love the Daydream album, but I'm going to pin When I Saw You. And I'm going to spin Loverboy Firecracker, which kind of surprises me, but it's almost like for the historical significance.
Yeah, true. It is an iconic moment in sort of Lamb history. But When I Saw You, the way that song is produced, have you tried singing along to When I Saw You?
I'm not blessed with that kind of voice, but there's no breath in there. It's just...
I mean, it's obviously been edited that way to sound that way, but trying to sing, I'm like in between, because she doesn't take a breath. It's like one long melismatic phrase. It's ridiculous.
Okay, I'm trying to let the Firecracker version of Loverboy kind of grow on me because it's never going to win over the Candy version, but it's just that cultural significance. I'm gonna let that win today and give it the spin. So that was spin, pin, or bin. Josh, thank you so much for your time today. It was great to finally chat with you properly. This is as best as in person I get with anyone right now over video. This is the new normal. This is our version of meeting up and going for a drink with someone. So great to finally hang out with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And you can find Josh on Instagram and on Twitter. It's Joshua Tonks, Tonks for Tonks. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter as well under Treacle Tots. And don't forget, you can support the podcast on Hey Lamb Podcast over on Instagram. And I forget to mention this, I need to get this in on the outros. Anyone that's listening on Apple, please do go and leave a 5-star review because it really helps other people find the podcast. Josh, thanks again, and I will see you on Instagram, I guess.
Yes, you will.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.